money doesn't buy happiness. However, there's hardly any happiness when you have no money. When you talk about money, especially in recruiting, the recruiting talk about money becomes more and more challenging. Finances, offers, and more, the recruiting talk of today's job world. There's a huge problem. The demands for financials go up, and they only know one way, and that way is up, up, and up. You can, of course, negotiate. The question is how. And some people might wonder, well, I thought the next generation wants to have more spare time and not more money. So what do they prefer? More spare time or more money or both? So we need to get a direction in this maze of recruiting talk, and we have to talk about realities. I know this topic is tough, and I know that some people will not appreciate what I say now. However, we need to accept that prices went up in real life out there. Inflation is there. And when you now say, well, inflation is there, but it hit the company as well. Here's some news for you. It is not the applicant's problem when your company cannot handle the price inflation, because they have to deal with it. So have you. That's actually an argument in their favor, not in yours. Data is available. They can compare. And if you deny the existence of actual data, valid, reliable, and publicly available data where you don't even need anything else for, then Google to find this valid and reliable data. When you deny the existence of that data, you will lose when it comes to recruiting talent. And it's not about no one wants to work anymore. It's not about that people feel entitled. It is you making a bad offer. And I know this is an unpopular opinion, but the cost of living went up significantly. This is known and cannot be denied. I know there are certain statistics in government where you have a very theoretical shopping cart and you say, oh, in this shopping cart, the inflation is roughly pretty much the average of the last years. Then people will rightfully so answer you and they say, well, there are certain things I do not have that often. I do not buy a smartphone every year. I do not buy a TV every year. However, I have rent every month and I have food every day, and the price rise there is significantly higher. You can, of course, now negotiate, and it is wise to do so. You need sales skills when you are in recruiting today. The phrase which I still hear, I don't have to sell, I work in HR. This was a bad phrase in the past, and it's even worse today. If you have no sales skills and you work in HR or recruiting, you need to get these sales skills ramped up very quickly. The quicker, the better. As soon as you get to the negotiation phase, there are two aspects you can talk about in the first place. One is tangible benefits. Tangible benefits, for example, is education, any kind of ongoing training that you offer. And by the way, people often ask, what kind of training is this? And when you then say, oh yeah, we have internal coaches, anyone knows what that in most cases means. Often these are people who hold no professional qualification for coaching. They tell you something which is simply called onboarding, and you try to sell it to them as coaching. When people talk to you about ongoing training, they want to know which vendor do you use, where does the training take place, who are the professional trainers, do you have references where I can check the whole thing you claim here. You need to have an offer of professional development programs which you have done in the past, or if you haven't done so, offer from now on. When you simply say qualifications not your problem, no one gets more than the bare minimum. When, for example, you say, oh yeah, we have a whole series of ongoing training. So, for example, you get the fire training and the security training, and you get the machine training you work at. These are legal obligations you have to provide anyway. This is not professional training that you can claim anything positive for your organization for. You have to deliver it if you want or not. So the first tangible benefit always is education, because education always has the best return on investment, of course, but you have to be specific. And if you have no specific aspects at hand where you make a very clear statement of this is available for you under these circumstances, then people will walk away, and rightfully so. If you, for example, say, well, we pay you something, for example, for travel. This was a great benefit for a long time. In the German-speaking area, it's not anymore. The German ticket, the Deutschland ticket, which is a full flat rate travel the whole country, is 49 euros. That's not too much. Same in Austria. It's not much more. It's slightly more in Switzerland, for example. In other countries, you don't have these flat rates. That is still something which might be of significant value. But in many countries, it is not anymore. And by the way, if you think, well, the competition isn't really there anymore, I can offer whatever I want, I can just tell you in Switzerland, people often get mobility flat rates paid from 10 to 20,000 Swiss franc per year. No questions asked, or very few questions asked. So here you see how important it is that you say that my offer is a good one. When you say, oh, we actually pay half of your train ticket, 30 quid a month, and you think that is something that makes people cheer on the other end of the phone, you unfortunately have not arrived in reality of today. If you now say you have special benefits, for example, for health or for pension plans, that is helpful. However, it is in the future. And we have generations entering the job market right now who are the instant reward generation. They want to see something now, not in the future. And also, of course, they rightfully claim, well, when you pay me well, I can pay for my gym membership and for my pension fund. So what about paying me well instead of just talking about that? So that's about tangible benefits. The intangible benefits is about company culture, organizational culture, leadership culture, team spirit, etc. Anything you offer here. However, it has to be congruent with reality. So when you look on platforms like Glassdoor or the German equivalent Kununu, it has to be there as well. And by the way, if you now say, well, our average score on Glassdoor is XYZ or on Kununu it's XYZ, people are aware of how to read these kind of platforms. So for example, when you have a substantial criticism mentioned and magically, just days later, 3, 4, 5 very positive reviews of your company happen, they are aware that you're faking reviews. They are aware that you're faking that score, and that makes your whole offer non-credible. So you either have an honest profile, and that needs, of course, to be actively managed. So you proactively have to approach people where you think that they like what they do in your company and ask them, could you please write something? And they can write whatever they want. Don't tell them what they have to write, because it is very important that it is an authentic review. People easily spot when there are these very stiff, very marketing-like written statements where oh, okay, they had a bad review and then management just wrote some stuff by themselves. That is pretty embarrassing, and they will not believe anything you say. So when you get to the sales part of the recruiting interview, you can talk about tangible benefits and intangible benefits. And that, of course, might lead to an adoption and an adaptation of what they think they expect from you when it comes to salary. However, when you bring down the salary because you oversold them, and there is a certain aspect of overselling, a very short-term oversale leads to a guaranteed, and I repeat, a guaranteed later leaving of these people. Because people will sooner or later find out they were oversold, they compare on the market, and they leave. And they will leave you back stone cold. They will simply say, here's my 2 weeks notice, here's my vacation period, which I can still claim. I am out in 5 minutes. Thank you very much. So it is very important that you handle this properly. Stop trying to deal with people in a way that they are unable to compare. In today's times, there is transparency out there. You have to make a really good offer. And by the way, if you now say, our business model doesn't allow me to pay more, this is understandable and very honest. However, it is not their problem. It's the management task to adapt the business model. No one owes you work because your business model doesn't pay very well for the people. Don't feel entitled from the entrepreneurial side. I'm an entrepreneur myself for more than 20 years now. We have no right to feel entitled to the work of other people. We have to make things work. And that is our job. And what you really need now, and that is something which is a lot of work, and I call about salary bands. I talk about salary bands. A salary band means you have a certain job, let's say job X. I'm going to give you a simple example. Someone who's an engineer or has an engineering degree or engineering experience, engineering expertise, probably works in projects on a leadership position. That is a typical description on the job band. And then you have levels, level 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in each of these job bands. Level 1 means they are really new on the position. You need to onboard them. They cannot work on themselves, not work by themselves. There needs to be proper onboarding. They either have no expertise on the level you need it, or they have no experience, or both. Level 2 means they are on a good way. They are able to handle daily business to a certain level, but still need assistance, or they have questions because they lack the expertise or the experience up to the level you expect it to be. Level 3 means they fulfill the expectation. They do the job that you asked them to do in the job description. Level 4 means they exceed the expectations, either because they work more or they work better, or both. So either they work more hours or they work on a higher quality, or both of these. Then you should pay them more, because otherwise they will compare on the market and leave. And level 5 means they are so good in what they're doing, they are able to onboard others while still doing their daily business. That is the highest level. And of course, salary bands, when you now, for example, say, well, someone works in project engineering and then wants to be a project leader, so suddenly has leadership jobs to do. When you have salary bands, there is the theoretical option that salary bands overcut each other. That means that, for example, you are a project engineer and you make good money, and suddenly you become a project leader. However, you suddenly see that it's a very different job, and that means that they can overlap. So, for example, you get a promotion, but for the first couple of months, you actually make a bit of less money until you really got on board on the new job. A couple of months later, you make the same or even more than before. That is theoretically still available. I can tell you in reality, this disappears. When you ask someone, hey, do you want to get the promotion? By the way, you make less money. There was a certain time, and that applied to me as well. When I started in pharmaceuticals, first, they said, well, you studied teaching. You need to first show what you can bring to the table. Then you get the actual money. And I did that because I knew the investment was worthwhile. When I suddenly became a leader, including all the professional training that was done with that, they first said, you need to make a bit less money because you're not really doing the job. You have the title, but you're not really doing that job. After a couple of months, we will reevaluate, and then you get the same or even more money. And that happened. But that was a completely different time at the end of the 90s. By the way, the very same happened when I worked in IT. I worked for less, then delivered, then got the money. However, unemployment was very high back in the days, 10% or even more in the area where I lived. And that's not the case anymore. In many areas, you have 3%, which means we basically have anyone having a job. No one's unemployed except when they deliberately take time off or they call in sick. They're unable to work. They are relocating, or they just have a certain time frame of 3 months shifting from one job to another. So 3% and less is a very theoretical unemployment. Realistically, there is no unemployment available on the market. If you expect people to first show you that they can do the job and then get the money, I can understand that emotionally. And I come from a background where I had to do this. But I have to accept that the fact that this is not there anymore is a fact I cannot renegotiate or negotiate to disappear. We have to pay up front and sometimes even accept mishires, which means wasting the money and even trying to upgrade people's skills to the level where we want them to be and still realize they are unable to do whatever they claimed that they're able to do. And we just didn't see it in the first place. And unfortunately, we now either have to let them go or have to accept they're not delivering up to the promise. We have to see that the pay first attitude is there and we have to deliver on that. And salary bands have to adapt accordingly. It's a lot of work, but I can tell you when you have salary bands in place, the injustice of payment disappears. And by the way, never go down the route of telling people, oh, we don't talk about salary in this company, because that only leads to people talking a lot about salaries in your company. At the end, there needs to be a very clear negotiation end with a very clear and unambiguously found agreement. No tricks, no delays, no non-deliveries. And I can tell you what I mean with no tricks. One of my friends, and that happened in my circle of friends, signed a contract where they said, here's your salary X. After the probation time of 6 months, you get 15,000 euros more. What happened after the 6 months is I said, oh yeah, 15,000, but not in one chunk. It's in steps. So first 5,000 for 6 months, then 5,000 for another 6 months, and then 5,000 for another 6 months. And he quit 3 weeks later because he said management was straightforward lying to me. Legally, of course, he could claim they were not really lying. They were just hiding some details. And when you do these kind of tricks and renegotiations and not delivering on the promise, do not claim that you are a great employer. Do not claim there is a lazy generation. Do not say no one wants to work anymore. No one wants to be treated like that. Just imagine you have a customer who gets an invoice and says, oh yeah, I paid, but I paid in installments, of course, interest free. Of course I did, because I do. You would not work with that client anymore, and neither would I. Very important is no tricks, no delays, no non-deliveries. Anything you promised must be delivered. For whatever reason it doesn't happen, it will be held against you for a very good reason. And by the way, proactivity wins. I remember when I worked for a British pharmaceutical company, and when they offered me more, and they proactively approached us, not just me, everyone in the organization. And what they offered us, either extra vacation or some extra hours for special pay, or they said, there's a bonus in for you or more money. It was slightly below the expectation, Not much, but slightly. It was slightly below inflation, slightly below the expectation, but you always sat there and thought, I could now either get this money or I can start a whole negotiation process, which will take a lot of time and hassle. And I don't know what the culture will be afterwards and what my relationship will be with my boss. And it's fine. I just accepted it. And I happily accepted that. Proactivity wins. Unfortunately, in many European countries, we do not have the culture of proactivity. You wait for people to claim for more money. And then, of course, they come along with a huge chunk and you are very surprised. How could that have happened? And unfortunately, that's your fault, not their fault. We have to accept reality. And now with everything I said, it's your job to proactively act on that and make it happen in your organization. And of course, this is a big chunk of work. And when you now say, well, Niels, can we chat about that? Of course we can. So first, thank you very much for all the emails I received in the last weeks. This episode happened due to the amount of questions, due to salary related aspects in recruiting. So when you have any kind of ideas, open aspects, things you'd like to talk about, just drop me an email, nb@nb-networks.com, and then we take it from there. I will put the email just also in the show notes of this podcast. You also find my LinkedIn there. Feel free to connect with me. And of course, I'm happy to chat with you on LinkedIn as well, or anywhere where you find me on social media. And there's one aspect, two aspects more, which I highly recommend. One is we have live sessions available. When you go to expert.nb-networks.com, you can register your email address there, and then you receive only one email every Wednesday morning. It's 100% content ad-free guarantee. And in there, you do not only have access to anything I published, but you also find access to the live sessions we have. We have one live session roughly per month. And it's available in English and German, so you can bring colleagues as well, national and international colleagues. And then you see where is the live session going to happen and when. So you see date, time, and the access link is straight in there. So you can immediately check and we can see each other online and have a live chat with others as well. And the third aspect, which I always recommend, is the most important one. Apply what you heard in this podcast, because only when you apply what you heard, you will see the positive aspects of anything you heard here. And then you will see the positive changes you obviously want to have in your organization. I wish you all the best doing so. I'm available for help 24/7. So drop me an email or contact me on any means whenever you like. And at the end of the podcast, there's only one thing left for me to say. Thank you very much for your time.